3.6 is finally here, and so is the brand new character Evernight. In this video, I'm going to be taking you over everything you do need to know in order to properly understand and use Evernight, including a overview of her kit, best Lightcones, best Relic sets, and best Planar Ornaments, main stat recommendations for both running as a sub DPS for casters and also main DPS herself, substat priorities, team building ideas, and at the very end, I will be giving a small demo on how I do use her in a MOC run. Kicking it off with her kit overview. Her basic attack deals ice damage based off her max HP to a single designated enemy. Her skill consumes 10% of her own HP to summon the Memo Sprite Eevee, and will also increase crit damage of all ally Memo Sprites by an amount equal to 24% of Evernight's crit damage for 2 turns. Duration decreases by 1 at the start of Evernight's every turn, and if Eevee is on the field, you will rather restore 50% of its max HP instead. Using skill gives 2 Memoria stacks, and if you're in the Darkest Riddle state, you will gain 12 additional Memoria. Her ultimate will summon Eevee if it's not already on the field. Then Eevee will deal ice damage based off Eevee's max HP to all enemies, and will cause Evernight to enter Darkest Riddle state. In that state, all enemies receive 30% more damage. The damage dealt by Evernight and her Memo Sprite increases by 60%. And both Evernight and her Memo Sprite are immune to crowd control debuffs. You gain 2 Darkest Riddle charges. Memo Sprite Eevee consumes 1 charge after using Dream Dissolving as due. At the start of Evernight's turn, if no charges remain, exits the Darkest Riddle state. Her talent will let Evernight summon Eevee at the start of battle. Eevee has 160 speed by default, and Eevee's HP is half of Evernight's max HP. Anytime Eevee or Evernight loses HP, their crit damage will increase by 60% for 2 turns, and will gain 2 Memoria stacks, and can only trigger once per target per attack. When you do have 16 or more Memoria stacks, you will dispel and become immune to crowd control debuffs, and if Eevee is on the field, you will immediately take action, and can only be triggered after Memo Sprite Eevee uses Dream Dissolving as due. Her technique will have her gain an effect identical to the skill, which increases all Memo Sprites' crit damage and gaining a point of Memoria at the start of the next battle. Now for the Memo Sprite skills. The base skill ability automatically will select a target that prioritizes the enemy target that Evernight last hit. Will deal ice damage based off Eevee's max HP to a enemy. For every 4 points of Memoria that Evernight currently has, it will further increase the ice damage dealt based off Eevee's max HP, and after using it, Evernight gains a stack of Memoria. And then the Dream Dissolving as due that was mentioned in Evernight's kit. When Evernight's Memoria is greater than or equal to 16 points, and Evernight is not currently in a crowd control state, the ability can be used. For each point of Memoria currently in possession, it will deal ice damage equal to 12% of max HP from Eevee to the primary target, and ice damage equal to 6% of Eevee's max HP to all other targets, and after use it consumes all Memoria and HP, and Eevee disappears. So pretty much meaning, the more stacks you do have, you will be able to do more damage. 16 is a requirement for you to actually use this skill, which is going to be the biggest attack that Evernight and Eevee can do. It's going to do the highest damage. Every point you have above 16 is also going to be considered for this attack, so you can pretty much infinitely stack it if you want. So if you find setups for that to do more damage, it will work. So let's say you're up at 50 Memoria stacks, 60 Memoria stacks, 100 Memoria stacks. That does work. All of that will be consumed, and it will further increase the damage. The Memo Sprite talent will have Eevee be crowd control debuff immune, but also has an increased chance of being targeted. When Evernight is on the field, it will increase damage dealt for both Evernight and Eevee by 50%. And the unique enhanced disappear that Eevee does have is upon disappearing, increases Evernight's speed by 10% if the disappearance is due to Dream Dissolving as due. For each point of Memoria that was used in the attack, it will additionally increase Evernight's speed by 1%, counting up to 40 points of Memoria. Speed effect cannot stack and is removed at the start of Evernight's next turn. So the more points you consume, the faster of the speed boost you can get, giving you up to a 50% increase if you do consume 40 points within the attack, as the 40 points is the limit, and that will give you 40% plus the 10%, so 50%. Evernight's A2 for when there are 1/2/3/4 or more Remembrance characters in the team, while Evernight's skill persists. Additionally increases all Memo Sprites' crit damage by 5%/15/50/65%. So the more Remembrance characters on the team, the further her crit damage buffing for Memo Sprites will become. Her A4, Evernight is able to recover 70 energy and will gain a Memoria stack. When Evernight or an ally Memo Sprite uses an ability, Evernight will regenerate 5 energy and gain a Memoria stack. And Evernight's A6 will increase both Evernight and the Memo Sprite's crit rate by 35%. When using abilities, consumes 5% of the unit's current HP to increase both their crit damage by 15% for 2 turns. After Memo Sprite Eevee uses Dream Dissolving as due, it will recover a skill point for allies. And now finally for her Eidolons. Her E1 for when Evernight is on the field, and when there are 4 or more /3/2/1 enemy targets on the field, ally Memo Sprites deal 120/125/130/150% of their original damage respectively. This fixes her one little issue of her being an AoE centric unit, where if there's only one enemy on the field, she struggles a bit for damage. This pretty much solves that entirely, so for the less enemies that are on the field, the more damage you can do, as you are getting a original damage increase. And of course, when she's on the field and this E1 is active, it doesn't just apply to Eevee, it's also applying to characters on the team. So if you have RMC, Mem can get this buff. If Ika's on the team with Hyacinth, then Ika can do that as well. Her E2 will increase Evernight and her Memo Sprites crit damage by 40%. Each time Evernight gains a Memoria stack, it will increase the Memoria stack gain by 2 points, and when using ultimate, additionally gains 2 Darkest Riddle state charges. So anytime you gain 1 stack of Memoria, you're actually going to be gaining 3 with this, which is just going to further amplify the living hell out of the Memoria stacks you can gain. And as you already had 2 Darkest Riddle charges when you do use your ultimate, now you are able to get 4. Her E4 will increase ally Memo Sprite's weakness break efficiency by 25%, and Eevee gains an additional 25% weakness break efficiency for when Evernight is on the field. And her E6 will increase all allies all-type res pen by 20% while Evernight is on the field. After Eevee uses Dream Dissolving as due, Evernight gains 30% of the consumed Memoria in this attack. So however big amount of a Memoria stack you consume for the attack to detonate Eevee, you will immediately gain 30% of that value back. So if you had 60 Memoria stacks exactly consumed in that attack, you will gain 18 Memoria stacks back, as 30% of 60 is 18. For Lightcones, the best one overall is her own signature Lightcone, which does provide the wearer a 30% max HP increase. When wearer's Memo Sprite uses an ability, the wearer gains Noctis, which will provide all damage dealt by ally Memo Sprites to ignore 20% of the target's defense, increasing the damage that the wearer and the Memo Sprite deals by 30%, and when the wearer's Memo Sprite disappears, the wearer recovers 8 energy. As Evernight scales off HP, 30% max HP is extremely good. To top it all off, this is also great for supportive capabilities at the same time, because not only is Eevee going to ignore 20% defense, but people like Ika or Mem on the team can also do it for more overall damage. Free 30% increase the damage dealt for wearer and the Memo Sprite as well, so Evernight is going to do more damage. And the 8 energy, while not seeming like much, you really factor in how much you detonate that actual Memo Sprite. So it actually adds up a lot, and Evernight has a big 240 energy requirement, so this helps significantly in getting your ultimate back to keep up Darkest Riddle state. All these things are really strong for Evernight and what she does in her role, making it her overall best install option to use. Another Lightcone for her, which can actually be just as good for her signature and also can do more damage technically, is Castrus's signature Lightcone, which does provide the same 30% increase to max HP. When the wearer or Memo Sprite loses HP during their own turn, the wearer gains Death Flower, which will allow the wearer and their Memo Sprite to ignore 30% of the target's defense when doing damage for 2 turns. When the wearer's Memo Sprite disappears, advances the wearer's action by 12%, and the effect can only trigger 1 time that is reset every time the wearer uses ultimate. Again, HP increase, really good for overall damage. This instead gives 30% defense ignore as opposed to 20% to all Memo Sprites. So just more value for Evernight herself, for the Memo Sprite, and also Evernight herself if you ever use her basic. The advanced forward you get for 12% is also really good for getting more turns, especially paired with the speed buff you can get in the actual traces of their kit. Unfortunately, it is reset with every ultimate, so for Castrus, obviously this is tailor-made towards her because she needs to use her ultimate to summon her Memo Sprite. While Evernight can use it with skill, so it's a bit slower on this side. You don't focus on it too much, but it is still nice when you do proc it off. But it is still nice when you do actually proc it. Overall, this Lightcone can actually outperform her signature when it comes to doing damage herself, but her signature, with the bit of extra stuff you do get, makes it overall better. The Battle Pass Lightcone Sweat Now Cry Less is also fine, with a 12% increase to crit rate, and also a 24% increase to damage dealt by the wearer and their Memo Sprite whenever the wearer's Memo Sprite is on the field, and at S5, it's a 20% increase to crit rate with a 36% increase to damage dealt. Very straightforward Lightcone. 20% crit rate is honestly a little more than you need, especially when you factor in her best in slot Relic set giving some crit rate, how much crit rate she gets in her base kit, plus base crit rate, and also maybe even any buffs on her team. Honestly, the crit rate is a bit much for this, but you know, if you have no other option, this is still fine, especially since it is a free 36% increase to damage for both Evernight and her Memo Sprite. You can also use the other actual Battle Pass Lightcone, the Flower Members, for a 24% increase to the wearer's crit damage, and a crit damage increase for crit damage dealt by the wearer's Memo Sprite, increasing by 24% as well, and at S5, it's 40% and 48%. So anytime you're critting with either Evernight or the Memo Sprite, it's just going to do more. 40% for Evernight herself, and also is going to further impact her buffing as her buff scales off her own crit damage, and now Eevee is also going to deal an extra 48% crit damage increase. So good for her damage and also good for her buffing at the same time, making it another really strong option to use. The next option is not strong. It's really just because it increases max HP. You ignore the last part since she can't heal. So just a 16% increase in max HP, and at S5 is 32% max HP. If you have none of the other options I mentioned, this would be your Lightcone to use just because of the max HP increase, and that's really it. If you don't have this either, then you're going to be stuck with using whatever Lightcone you have that's a 5-star that has the highest base HP, as these are the only real Lightcones you can use. Again, her own signature, you can use Castresses, those are the two best options. If not those, one of the Battle Pass Lightcones like the Flower Members or Sweat Not Cry Less are also great. Story's next page is relatively on the weaker side, it's just for the max HP, and if you don't have any of those, then yes, you are forced to use a Lightcone with the highest max HP to get the best output, since nothing else is really going to work out of these Lightcones. For best relic sets, I don't have the area unlocked, so I can't show this in Databank, but it is the brand new World We're Making Deliverer, which the 2-piece does increase crit rate by 8%, and the 4-piece after the wearer uses basic attack or a skill, if the wearer's Memo Sprite is on the field, increases max HP of the wearer and their Memo Sprite by 24%, and will increase all allies' damage dealt by 15%, lasting until the wearer's next use of basic attack or a skill. Crit rate isn't nice. If it was crit damage, probably could be a bit better, but this does make her even easier to build than she already is when it comes to crit rate, because she gets a bunch of crit rate already. This gives you a free 24% increase to max HP, so further increase to your damage overall and HP needs. And also gives her some more supportive capabilities for your other DPS on the team that's going to be doing damage, like Castress as the main DPS, or someone like Hyacinth or Trippy who also do damage as well. So it's really just the full package for both a main DPS and sub DPS at once, making this her overall best in slot for you to use, regardless of her role. That's kind of the only 4-piece you do actually want to use. The rest would be using 2-piece until you get the world remaking set. 2-piece combinations would be like 2-piece world making with 2-piece wave strider or a scholar. Scholar has the same actual crit rate increase, so if you have like really no crit rate rolls and you somehow don't have enough, then you can run them together for just maxing out crit damage and HP rolls. Wave strider is crit damage, so you can run that together for crit rate crit damage. You can also do 2-piece in one of those with 2-piece of the Longevious set as well for the max HP, or 2-piece in one of those with 2-piece Hunter set for the ice damage it provides. Now for Planar Ornaments. So there are two sets that are very competitive with each other. Both of them can outperform each other depending on your team and depending on your setup, such as your main stat and such. The most consistent and always having uptime is going to be the Bone set, which provides a 12% increase to max HP when the wearer's max HP is 5,000 or higher, increases the wearer's and their Memo Sprite's crit damage by 28%. As Evernight scales off max HP, the max HP increase is going to be extremely good, and a well-built Evernight is going to have way more than 5,000 HP, so the requirement is not even going to be a problem. So providing you a free 12% max HP and also a free 28% increase to crit damage for the wearer's Memo Sprite and themselves. So Evernight herself and Eevee are going to get a big 28% increase to crit damage, which is going to be fantastic for their damage in battle, and also slightly increase the crit damage you can give to other Memo Sprites thanks to how Evernight's buff does work based off her own crit damage. So this is one of the two best sets to run. The other set is going to be the Arcadia set. When the number of allied targets on the field is not equal to 4, for every 1 additional / missing allied target, increases the damage dealt by the wearer and their Memo Sprite by 9% / 12%, stacking up to 4 / 3 times. On Evernight main DPS teams, or even as a sub DPS, you're going to have a bunch of Memo Sprites on the field, pretty much providing you an additional character or what is considered to be an ally target on the field. This obviously does change on the team, so Eevee is going to be counted as an additional 1. If you have RMC, Mem is counted as additional 1. If you're running her with Castress, then you also have the Dragon isn't considered extra 1, and also Little Eco with Hyacinth. All those Memo Sprites are considered to be an extra character, which can easily stack up the set. Even if you don't get the full bonus, it's still really strong, as Evernight's damage percent in her kit is not the greatest. So if you are running an HP orb specifically, Arcadia is actually the one to outperform Bone thanks to the additional damage percent you are getting, whereas running Ice damage orb is going to make Bone set outperform a little bit. So when you are considering full stacks with this set and also VS bone set, HP orb makes Arcadia set perform a little better, while with a ice damage orb, the bone set performs a little better. Do note though, the difference is extremely marginal, less than 1%, so really just use whatever set has the best pieces, and if you have to choose one to farm, just farm whichever one is more efficient. If you also have Hyacine and you want to consider getting a ornament for her, or you want to build really fast healers, Giant Tree has a good amount of value. Whereas if you maybe not have that and you need the Arcadia set for, let's say, Phyton as well, and you also have dog characters, then obviously this would be the better one to farm. Again, the difference is very, very marginal. Now for the Relic stats, starting with the main stats. For the best damage output, so mainly as a main DPS, and also if you want to get the best damage as a sub DPS, you want to run crit damage. Evernight has crit rate traces where she gets a good amount and also gets 35% from her A6. So crit damage body is definitely going to be optimal, and having a crit damage body is going to further amplify her crit damage buff she gives to ally memo spreads. However, if you are running her as a sub DPS for Castress and you want to sacrifice her damage a bit to get Castress to gain more new blood points, in that case, you can run HP percent to increase Evernight's max HP. It will be a damage loss, it will be less than crit damage, of course, as you're also amplifying the damage a bit less, but you get more new blood points by running an HP percent body on your Evernight. For the feat, you practically always will run HP percent, as Evernight really doesn't have a need for any speed. With the enhance that does provide speed from disappearing when it comes to the memo spread skills, the speed percentage buff can usually get you enough to even reach breakpoint speed to get at least 2 turns within a cycle. And that really is all the speed coverage you do need. And if you're also running something like Castra's Signature, where there is some form of action advance as well, that can also further amplify the reason. But there are very niche cases where you can use speed. It's going to perform worse usually, but if you want to get speed rolls to reach a hyperspeed plus Evernight in battle, it's not really worth going for, but for some setups such as getting even more detonations out, as Evernight can act quicker to actually get EV on the field more, there are setups you can do, but that's mainly for if you want to consume more HP for yourself to maybe give Cassius more new blood, or against even like Pollux boss specifically. In those cases, speed boots can work, but I personally always recommend running HP percent and never really going with speed. For the orb, this does depend. You can do ice damage or HP percent. They're not super big between each other from the differences. As I mentioned previously on the Planar Ornaments section, you can run ice damage for bone set to perform the best, or HP orb on the Arcadia set to perform the best. For pure damage, ice damage orb is going to be the best, especially if you reach a good amount of HP without an HP orb, since Evernight doesn't have too much damage percent in her kit, as I did previously mention. So ice damage is usually going to always be the better play for her damage, but you can run HP percent orb, especially if you want to run her as a sub DPS for Castress. For the same reason as the body, HP orb is going to let Castress generate more new blood points for her ultimate. So as a sub DPS, or if you're just lacking HP, then you can run an HP orb as well. And for the link rope, you actually always want to run HP percent for the best damage. The only niche case where you run energy regen to get more ultimates and have Darkest Riddle stay up is if you're running her as a sub DPS and you don't have her signature, as she might struggle a bit for when it does come to energy, and having to stay up might be a bit of a problem. So in that case, you can run energy regen rope, but even then it's usually going to perform worse than an HP percent rope, and in most cases and practically every case, you want to run HP percent rope. Now for the substats, it's really just focusing on HP, crit rate, and crit damage. For HP, aiming around 7,000 or higher is going to be ideal. If you're a little below that, that's completely fine, but getting to 7,000 or higher is great. If you're running a big HP setup, then 8,000 or higher would be your goal, such as running HP body and HP orb. In that case, you want to aim for 8,000 or higher. But for general sub DPS properly built with DPS capabilities like Ice Orb and also crit damage body and such, aiming for around 7,000 is going to be your goal. Crit rate, just like any other character that does damage, you want to get it to as close as 100% as possible. She has crit rate traces. She has the crit rate 35% increase she gets from one of her bonus traces as well. So definitely factor all that in, and that trace also is going to be something you consider outside of battle, as obviously it doesn't display. So realistically, all you need is 65% crit rate to have 100% crit rate in battle. So if you're able to get to 60% to 65% outside of battle, that would be your ideal goal, which is extremely easy with Evernight. Crit damage wise, getting it to 170% or higher is going to be a goal as well. If you're able to get it to 200 plus, that's going to be great, but 170 minimum should be a goal for you. Now for team building ideas. Kicking it off with main DPS Evernight, there's a really simple, just straightforward team structure you want to follow. Usually with her, you want to use Remnant's characters. One of the best ones for that is going to be RMC. right here. So I'm just going to put RMC on the team. One of the best teammates. The next teammate is going to be Chibi, as Chibi is one of the best characters for any HP scaler, really, especially if you have E1. Chibi goes great on this team. And the last slot would be Hyacinth. Hyacinth is significantly better than any other healer option. So you'd put her on this team, but I don't have her, so I'm just going to put Linksha. If you also don't have Hyacinth, just use whatever that you have for the best option. The actual next best option isn't even Linksha, I'm not going to lie. It's actually Popo, even though she provides a big attack buff that is useless. It's because of her big energy buff. That is significantly better on this team, especially with Evernight's big energy requirements. So that's why she's actually the next best option. And she also heals great and can freely spam skill on this team, since you don't need to skill with anyone except Evernight, but Evernight also doesn't consume skill points. So Popo can freely spam her skill for great healing output. If you want to do sustain this, obviously sub out the last stop for another AoE buffer, since you also have Chibi on the team, so Ruan Mei works really good. Unfortunately, you can't use someone like Sunday too well, just because the detonation is going to make his ult buff not actually stay up. So he doesn't have the greatest synergy there, so you'd really just use like another AoE buffer. Again, Ruan Mei is really the only other option. There's going to be more synergies you can't do, but Ruan Mei overall is going to be the best play for a sustainless team. Unfortunately, RMC and Chibi don't have the greatest sub options. Like, instead of Chibi, you can use Ruan Mei in her spot, and the last spot, obviously, go to like a sustain again. RMC is, you know, a free character everyone has, but if your RMC is in use, then you are not looking at too many options. Unfortunately, it's going to be a bit rough. Now for a sub DPS team, so I'm going to go ahead and put Castris here, as really who else would you be doing it for? It's also a very simple structure. Even though RMC technically would get the full buff, Chibi actually has better value in this slot, just because she's going to be buffing both these characters' damage. So that's why running both of them together is just a better idea with Chibi, since again, she buffs both of them as opposed to RMC, who's really only buffing one, and the extra crit damage is relatively negligible. Last slot, of course, Hyacinth, just going to significantly be better at all times. If not Hyacinth, again, use whatever healer. That has great healing output in this case. Linksha is better. Popo in this case wouldn't be the best, because you want to just get as much healing as possible for new blood and such, so Luocha works great. Gallagher still works as well, so you have free options when it comes to that. In this case, you can't do sustainless, because Castris overall cannot do sustainless. And again, if you don't have Chibi, just sub her out for someone like Ruan Mei, as that is really the only other AoE buffer that works with these characters fully. Alright, so as I mentioned, I'm going to be doing a trial run. This is the team I'm going to be running here. You can improve it if you have Hyacinth. It's obviously going to perform better, but I do not have Hyacinth. So this is going to be the run. You can obviously differentiate the numbers. My Evernight does have her Lightcone. She is completely E0 right now, but I do have a E2 Chibi that also has S1, and my Linksha also does have S1 as well. Although, right now, Evernight did just release as I'm recording this, so my build is scuffed. As you see, she doesn't actually have a set. It's just all this with crit damage, HP, because I don't have HP boots on this side, apparently. I might have accidentally got rid of it at some point, and I also have HP when I hope to have ice damage, but I need to make a piece for that. So for now, that is what I'm going to be rocking. So I'm taking it against this side, the Japad side, which does have a big portion of ice res, so this is a bit unfavorable for her. So you can definitely expect different results if you take her on the Liga side, who has ice weakness, if you have Hyacinth S1 on the team, if you have Eidolons in your Evernight and such. So Evernight at a base is pretty easy to use. You really just do whatever you can, and obviously buff her as you can. So you do want to get Chibi ult up before you're able to actually attack. We're gonna have Mem be able to buff right here, and I'm going to ult to put myself into Darkest Riddle state. Of course, you can do a lot more stuff high ceiling. I'm not the craziest player in this game. I am, like, you know, honestly pretty average. And so as you see, this does have the detonation, as I have over 16 stacks needed, so I'm just going to detonate it. And as we do see, we do have good damage coming out here. I'm going to also save the ult just to get more for when he summons everything, because it's going to proc right here. So he's going to summon all the guys on the side. This is definitely not going to be a zero cycle. I need to obviously have a bit more experience with this team at E0 to actually go for a zero cycle, but I'm just going for a general clear guide, because most of you probably watching are not going to care about zero cycles and such anyways. So I'm not going for a super optimal rotation. Like, if you're a really good player, you can probably figure out a lot more setups and such. But again, this is just generally taking you over what I do plan on doing. Chibi, ult, you just refresh that whenever you want. There's also all the enemies here, so you want to get that. These enemies being AoE is also good. I don't know why I said this like that. So this is good, because Linksha is going to make it to where I don't die, since they don't have enough damage. But we're going to get the buff here, which is a bit annoying, because I kind of wish it waited just so I could have saved it.
But we do have 42 stacks, so this is going to do a good chunk of damage. Might actually kill the guy on the right. No, not even close. He's going to put Evernight into a duel, which is fine, because it's going to smack and give us more stacks. Cycle rolls over, kills these. We have to go ahead and pop alt again. Want to get the RMC mem buff as much as possible. If you can time it better to where you have Evernight act and then do it, that's going to be even better. Now I'm going to put myself back in the Darkest Riddle state. And this should clear the wave right here, as it's still my turn, so I'm just going to do this. I'm stuck in a duel, but it doesn't matter. No, because this guy is absurdly tanky somehow, but this thing blows up, and we are good to go, as it just dies here. So we are very close to actually getting another mem buff right here, which is good. And this team lets someone like Lingsha and RMC freely spam their attacks as well. Or not attacks, but skills. Just because Evernight herself doesn't need to actually have skill points consumed. Yeah, even though it does have significant ice res, especially Japard himself, and, you know, this enemy being the real boss of MLC. So this is going to put me over, but unfortunately it's not going to be enough to get enough stacks. We're really close, but that was enough. We're going to go ahead and do this. Almost have Darkest Riddle ready here. We are taking a bit of damage here. Have that, waste that, summon this. Have a link shot attack, and I'm also going to do this to also give enough energy almost. I think it counts as a thing. No, it doesn't. Okay. Forgot if her ult technically counted as something. I keep saying something, but the Mammoth Spread attack, that's what it was called. So if you're taking a lot here, this is going to do good damage, but I'm going to put myself in the Darkest Riddle state first. This is going to do this. Unfortunately, that's going to have Mem act again. But instead of getting 2 outputs, I'm just going to have a big amount of Memoria stacks here, which is probably going to almost very close to kill Japard. I am getting a bit low on HP here, but it's fine because his AoE is still not going to kill. And the cycle's going to roll over, and the bunnies are going to attack here to practically give me almost enough here. And then this AoE is also not going to kill, so you don't have to worry about this. Again, if you have Hyacinth, or even someone with more healing outputs, such as like Luocha, it's going to be even better. This AoE doesn't kill, and I can all, boom, just heal right back up. Very easy to pilot at a base level. Again, a lot more stuff you can do if you do sustain this, if you do all that stuff, but obviously I'm just doing this to show like the most relatable, quote-unquote, clear I can do. And this should be it. Oh no, look. This boss has been annoying. There you would refresh the buff, but I forgot, it doesn't matter anyways. But yeah, that's pretty much how you would do it. So 2 cycles, not bad at all. And that does bring this guide to a close, taking over everything you do need to know in order to understand and use Evernight, including an overview on our kit, best Lightcones, best Relic sets and Ornaments, Relic stats and what to aim for, while also going over team building ideas for main DPS and sub DPS, and also a sample run. Once again, I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and to the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all other types of style content, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out.